This episode of The Edge is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek.fm at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the nonprofit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode, join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
You're listening to Trek FM.
What have you done out there on the edge of Federation space?
Welcome to The Edge, Trek FM's dedicated Star Trek Discovery podcast. I am your host, Mere Brandon-Shea Mutala, and joining us today, as always, is the ever-evil Empress Amy Nelson.
That is correct. I'm glad you got my title as accurate as possible. Emperor Nelson is in the house.
Yes, absolutely. And I am thrilled to be in your service, dear Empress. Do you want Empress or Emperor?
Emperor.
Dear Emperor, I want to be in your service and serve you well. And joining us today, who will be served up as soup later on, Patrick Devlin. How are you doing, Patrick?
Hey, how are you? I figured I fit in. I already have the goatee and all that nobody really has except for Spock, but we attribute it to the entire universe.
Oh, Patrick, you look delicious. Well, we are going to be talking about the back half of the first season, not the second. It feels like the second season, but it's the back half of the first season. But we've done the first part already. We did it with Mike and Tom Elliott back in December, but we're going to be talking just about the back half of the season. Before we get to that, though, we've got some news to talk about. We got some interesting things to talk about. Now, Patrick, I gave you a little bit of homework. Did you accomplish your homework?
I did. I actually was able to do it while at work, so don't tell my boss.
I won't tell your boss.
And
I thought I was the one giving homework.
Not today. Today it was me. The homework that we had assigned was watching the deleted scene that was recently presented to the audience at WonderCon, I believe it was called. I'm in Canada, so most of our conventions are called MooseCon or BeaverCon. So, this is WonderCon is something a little different. But this deleted scene shows Amir Georgiou still on the Klingon homeworld. Looks like she's still in the same Orion prostitute establishment that she was in the end of episode 15 there. And a man comes up to her, a Trill, comes up to her and says, "Hey, I want to get to know you." And she says, "You're no Trill. You're a fake Trill." And he touches his head and his spots disappear. They come back and he says, "I want to meet you." She thinks he's Federation. And he says, I'm a part of the Federation, but I'm a little different. And he shows her this little box that has the Black Starfleet badges that we saw way back in episode 3 on the Starship Discovery, and says, "Welcome to Section 31," and the scene ends. Now, Patrick, as our special guest, I would like to know, what do you think of this deleted scene right off the bat? Actually, wait, before we talk about what we think about the scene, sorry, I'm gonna go on the fly here. I'd like to talk about, where do we think this would have fit? Patrick, where do you think this would have fit?
After the last episode.
After the last episode, yeah.
Yeah, because he mentions that the way he talks, it sounds like she now runs this little brothel,
right?
I guess is a good way to call it. So we would have to have enough time for her to take it over.
Right.
That wouldn't have happened in 10 minutes, or 20 minutes, or by the end of the episode. So I feel it takes place afterwards, and it should have been like a Marvel movie where they drop something in after the credits, and they should have dropped this scene after the credits.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think that if they would have kept it, it should have been a credit cookie, which is like right at the end of the credits. Amy, when do you think this would have taken place?
Well, I agree with you now, but my initial thought was right before she was going in and getting pleasured. So right before then, I thought that's where it fit in.
Okay, so you thought it was in the episode, but now you think it might have been afterwards?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was afterwards as well, because she does look like she's in charge of this establishment now, and she's running. And he says something along the lines that made me think. I've watched the scene twice now. That made me think that she was in charge of the place. The Trill, though, with the disappearing spots on his head when he touches it, that's like the tattoos from the tattoo parlor. At least that's the impression that I got, because we see that one Trill who was actually a Trill got that tattoo with the butterfly on her chest in episode 15, and she touched it and it appeared. So I'm thinking that that's got to be what the guy's got on his head, is these interesting disappearing, reappearing tattoos, which would be great if you want to get a job, right? I mean, you could be all tattooed up and then you could go in and look prim and proper and just turn off your tattoos, right?
That's, yes, very, very ingenious. I like that.
If they had that today, I would totally get a Chakotay tattoo.
Yes.
I would totally, but I don't have the nerve to get it now. But I mean, I loved Chakotay's tattoo. I would totally get a Chakotay tattoo if I could just turn it off when I needed to. Anyways, okay, so let's jump into now. What do we think of this scene, Patrick? I got the impression that you think this is really awesome.
I do. I did like it a lot. I like the fact that Section 31 approaches her. I like the fact that they actually said the word Section 31 and a black comm badge shows up, so that we see that connection flat out now. It's not assumed or thought about or debated. That's what it is. I like the fact that he talks about how, because he's Section 31, even before he says the word Section 31, you already knew that's where he was going with it. And he says, I'm not Starfleet, I'm something more or better or different or whatever wording he uses. And that's how he's able to find her, meaning that he has more resources than even Starfleet has because he's Section 31.
Yep.
I liked all of that.
Right on. What do you think of Section 31 in general? Because I know that Section 31 is kind of divisive with fans. Some people really like it. Some people couldn't care less. And some people really actively think it's a terrible thing that Starfleet has something like this. And they don't think it's Trek. What do you think? So,
I mean, I wouldn't be upset if Section 31 never existed. It wouldn't be like the whole show series universe was destroyed for me. But it lends more realism to me for their ideas. You could not continue a society the way they do without some kind of espionage against other societies and vice versa.
Right. Amy, you don't know much of Section 31, do you?
No, I don't.
Right.
Because it's not in TNG.
Right, it's not. Retroactively, they've fans have said, "Oh, maybe these people were Section 31." Retroactively, they've done justification for some of the Admiral's actions in some of the different episodes.
With Pegasus.
Yeah, you got it exactly. But yeah, Section 31 was really introduced in Deep Space Nine, and I don't want to spoil that for you, and I don't think we really need to discuss it. It did come up in Star Trek Enterprise.
Yeah, that's where I know it from, because I've seen Enterprise.
Okay, yeah, so they're in Enterprise as well, and then we see Section 31 in Star Trek Into Darkness as well, and so they've been very popular in the books. So from what you know about Section 31, Amy, how do you feel about this scene?
Well, I agree with Patrick. I think it's something that makes it. I mean, it is real life, and you're not going to always have this utopia society. There's always going to be greed and power hungry, and how can we overcome? And, so to me, it just makes it more realistic. And I liked it. I liked the callback of the black badge, because we were wondering, well, maybe it's just, because they're the scientific ship and it's an emblem of the spore drive. And so, but now it has greater meaning, and I really like that. And I like the fact that there's potential that we're going to see Michelle Yeoh in next season.
Yeah. See, I like Section 31. I think Section 31 is really interesting, and they can provide a lot of interesting story elements. A lot of people have been questioning, are they used too much? And personally, I don't think they've been used too much. They weren't used a lot in Deep Space Nine. They were only used in, I think, 2, maybe 3 episodes of Enterprise. And then we saw them again in Star Trek Into Darkness. And we really haven't seen them that much. They've been a lot in the books. And I believe it's David Mack has written some really excellent novels that have involved Section 31. But I personally don't think they've been used too much. And I don't mind that we're going to see Section 31 in Star Trek Discovery. But I got to say, I really don't like the badge, and I'm really frustrated with the badge itself because Section 31 is this covert group of people, and they wouldn't be advertising themselves with this unique badge that's only theirs and putting themselves on display with some type of symbol. That doesn't make any sense for what Section 31 is. And, I've seen a lot of people making comments online like, oh, what are they going to have, a baseball bat or a baseball hat next that says Section 31? Oh, look at me, I'm in Section 31. I went to Section 31 and all I got is this lousy t-shirt, like they wouldn't advertise themselves this way, and it doesn't really make sense. And for me, being Section 31 is problematic that they've been on the ship and that they have this area of the ship, because while I realize the writers can write anything they want, the implication is that Section 31 has an area of the ship that's isolated and exclusive to them, and that person was on display protecting that room so nobody went in there. So people are going to know that there's some covert force on the ship. And to me, that doesn't make any logical sense for how Section 31 operates and how I've seen them operate in the Star Trek universe. So,
yeah, I completely agree because, when they're bringing the prisoners onto Discovery way back in episode 3, and they're like, ooh, what are those black badges? And obviously, Landry must know something. She's like, eyes forward, keep walking. Like, yeah, there's people on display. And so people are going to know that there's something up. So,
yeah, but in a perfect world, yeah, they would never be on display. But even if you look at wartime, massive wartime, not skirmishes like we're having around the world now, but you'd see things like the CIA and stuff have identifiable marks. People knew who the KGB were during the height of that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but not when they're undercover and operating, like.
But are they during wartime on a ship? I mean, they're not necessarily undercover at that point. They're not infiltrating the Klingons then. That's when they wouldn't have anything with them. You're right. It does make a lot less sense to give it now to Georgiou, but it doesn't necessarily make no sense when they're on the ship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but when we get to Deep Space Nine with Bashir, like Section 31 is not known.
Yeah, well, that's because they all died because they kept running around with black badges on.
Fine, if that's the logic that suffices it for you, then all the power to you. I mean, like, that's I don't know. To me, that's ridiculous. And especially here, we're going to give this badge. We're just going to leave this badge on the table and hope she picks it up, right? And walk away from her on the Klingon homeworld. I'm just going to leave this Federation badge here and in a public bar, just be like, welcome to Section 31. I don't know, like...
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I'm just glad we got an answer on the black badges finally. So I don't really care how that came about, I guess. I cared more about knowing than how. But you notice he didn't go too far before he realized she did pick it up.
Sure. Yeah.
He didn't run away. It's not like he's like, oh, bye.
But still, like, fine, he goes, he sees her turn around. If he didn't see her turning, do you think, like, yeah, I better go back and pick this up? I don't know. But I don't know. I'm a negative Nancy, I guess. I don't know.
All right, so outside of the black comm badge, you didn't like any of the rest of the scene?
The scene was fine. I didn't have a problem with the scene at all. There's a lot of really cool stuff in it. I really like, that some of the things that we saw in there, that Orion, what's his name? The brother of Howard, Clint Howard. He's still there. He's still high. That's kind of funny. He's still in the scene. And, we got the same dude that was like pleasuring Georgiou and whatnot. And, so there's a lot of continuity there, which, lends credence to the fact that this would take place afterwards. And I didn't mind the scene, and I don't mind that Section 31 is there. Now that we've been given the answer of this badge, I'm like, I don't like that this badge means Section 31, because I don't believe Section 31 would put themselves on display. That's not the Section 31 that I've come to know solely in the television universe. Fair. So that's all. I mean, I just got to be picky, I guess. So anywho. Okay, so there's a little bit more news that we want to talk about here. So the actor that played the Section 31 agent, Alan Van Sprang, I guess is his name. I don't know this actor. Do you guys know him?
No, I do not.
Yeah, I don't know him from anything, but he says in an interview that's on TrekCore that you can find on TrekCore, he says that Section 31 is apparently going to be a big part of season 2. He doesn't know exactly how big a role. He just knows that he filmed this scene and they deleted it from the episode and kept it as this teaser trailer for season 2. But he knows that he's going to be a part of season 2, but he hasn't read anything, and so he doesn't know how extensive his role is. But he is taking the time that he's not only watched all of the Section 31 episodes for Deep Space Nine, but he's about to start reading the novels that take place in the Section 31 timeline, continuity, whatever you want to call it. There was a 4-part novel series where this was before Enterprise, and there was a novel from each of the series. There was a TOS, a TNG, a Voyager, and a Deep Space Nine, and they were all amazing, amazing books. So they've got a picture of those in this article, plus the two novels that David Mack has written that take place post Deep Space Nine, with Bashir and being involved. So if you haven't read the books, you should check them out. Control is amazing. It's jaw-dropping. It's really, really well written, and I highly recommend it. Some other news that came out of the convention is that we've got a little bit of information on what the plans are for season 2. Right now, the plan is that there's going to be 13 episodes for season 2. Now, that was originally the plan for season 1, but they did get extended to 15, so hopefully that'll happen again. Production is supposed to be starting next month in April. Well, I guess this month, as this episode is going to drop. We're recording this on the 26th of March. But there's no release date yet for when season 2 is going to happen, so we still don't quite know. I think we're all expecting early 2019. But Jonathan Frakes has also said in an interview that you can find on TrekMovie.com that he's read the first script of the second season, and he's read the outline for the second script, and he says it's on fire. And Frakes, when he was asked if he was going to be directing again for Discovery, Jonathan Frakes said, yes, I'm about to go back. So I think that's going to be really cool. The only thing I hope and pray is that he just doesn't release any spoilers like he did last time. Just keep it quiet, Jonathan Frakes. Keep it quiet. So that's the only thing that I got to say.
I know. As I was reading the article, I was like, oh, I hope he doesn't spoil it like he did last time. I was sort of hesitant reading it, going, oh, how much do I want to know?
Did you read that deleted scene that Jonathan Frakes was talking about when young Guinan was a part of Section 31 from the Mirror Universe? Anyways, no, I just don't say anything, Jonathan Frakes. Please don't say anything about season 2. I don't want to know. Okay, so what we're going to do in this episode today, we're going to be talking about the back half of season 2. Amy, I'm going to get your opinions first off, just overall in general. How did you feel about the second half of the season?
Well, I liked it. I'm still just so happy to have Star Trek on TV. Going through, I did postcards from the Edge, so I got to hear a lot of the fan response. And I think as Discovery kept going, there was less and less criticism. I liked the story. It was a little dark, but it seems to fit in with how stories are being told nowadays. But it still kept that hope for me in certain characters. And, as we've done themes of Discovery, we've done, 3 episodes of that. I really like Discovery. I think there's so much into it. I think you can get so much out of it. I think it's very well visual. I like the script and the words. And so I'm very pleased with it. And I think the second half, really did a good job in tying things up for me.
Is Discovery your favorite Star Trek now?
Oh, no, TNG is. Nothing will ever.
You should see the disgusted look she just gave me, honestly. Patrick, what are your overall thoughts for the back half of the season?
All right, so I'm going to be turned into soup sooner rather than later, because Emperor Nelson's not going to be happy. I hated it. I didn't like the back half. Maybe I'm the wrong guy to be even doing this guesting here today, but I just felt that the story that they were trying to tell, actually, I liked. It's the way they told it I didn't enjoy. I didn't like that they contradicted themselves constantly just to get to their point. It seemed like they had a point in mind. They were heading towards it. They messed up and they just said, just rush it together and throw it out there. Just get it back together. And I know some of that is the problem with this kind of storytelling, the way this storytelling comes together. And it does happen in other series, but not to this extent. I don't see it happening in like a Game of Thrones nearly as often as it did in the back half of this season. And the front half seemed to follow its own continuity pretty well, that I didn't expect it to happen now. You know what I mean? Like you got the break, and then everything after the break kind of just contradicted itself over and over again.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you a fair amount. Like there's a few things that I've watched in my life where I've watched them and I didn't like them right off the bat. I watched them like, this is terrible. Whatever it happens to be. Like, I didn't like the first Matrix the first time I saw it. I saw it in theaters. I'm like, what is this movie? And it was a couple years before I went back and visited it. And I really enjoyed it the second time that I saw it. So, as I mentioned on the last episode of The Edge, I took a month break. I didn't listen to any Discovery podcasts because as the season progressed towards the end, I was increasingly getting frustrated with the writing of the show, and it was really starting to upset me as I was watching the show and going along. And I'm like, look, I really need to take a break from this. So I paused, I took a month break, and then, over a period of a week, I rewatched the back half of the season with my daughter. And we got to the first episode, Despite Yourself, and I'm like, okay, this is actually pretty good. This is fun. And I get to the Wolf Inside. I'm like, this is pretty good. I'm really enjoying this. We get to Vaulting Ambition, and I'm like, okay, this is where it started to fall apart for me. And it still fell apart for me this time. And you know what? The season really fell apart in the exact same spots that it did the first time. So I think I really did get a fair personal assessment of it the first time around because it held up. My opinions held up as much with the second. You mentioned Game of Thrones. And as I've watched Game of Thrones, we've been left with cliffhangers and we've been left with plot threads in Game of Thrones. And I compare it to Game of Thrones because there's a lot of twists that are happening in this show. And I've never ended an episode and been like, that doesn't make any sense. I've never ended an episode of Game of Thrones and been like, there's something in this episode that just does not make sense. And after the season is finished or whatever, gone back and watched it and still felt that doesn't make sense. Everything makes sense. I may question what is going to happen with this plot thread that they've left dangling. But I have never, ever been like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, for example, in season 1, somebody mentioned this on Twitter, that Ned Stark's character doesn't make any sense in season 1. I'm going to give some season 1 Game of Thrones spoilers here. In that Ned Stark goes up to Cersei and tells her the information that he knows about Joffrey. Okay? And they're like, why would he do that? That is a dumb plot point. And I'm sorry, but to me, that is a perfectly acceptable plot point for that character, because he is an honorable individual, and we were told that character trait in the first episode of Game of Thrones when he wields the sword to kill that person from the Night's Watch. And he says, I'm the king, I have honor, I pass the sentence, I cut off his head. So we've been told. So, like, that's an example that somebody said that I don't agree with because it makes sense. This is not the Game of Thrones podcast. So
no, but you're right. Like you were saying, I'm sorry to cut you off, but it doesn't make sense for me to have done that, but that doesn't mean it doesn't make sense for that character. And
right.
I think that's where people kind of get confused when they're talking about it. But by me not wanting to do that, knowing that it might lead to my death or that it does lead to his death. Okay. So I might be too afraid to do it, but I don't think, like you said, he would have done exactly that. That makes perfect sense for him.
Right. He's an honorable individual. He's going to go to Cersei and say, look, I have this information that I'm about to reveal. You now need to protect yourself because I'm going to reveal this information if you don't leave. And then she kills him, right? So he underestimates her. That doesn't make him, that's something that he did wrong in underestimating, but that's perfectly within his character. And there was things in this season that I didn't feel were within people's characters. So, and we're probably going to touch on some of them. But before we get too far with our Game of Thrones podcast, let's jump into the episode Despite Yourself, which is episode 10, the first episode that we got when we came back from the break. So basically, in a nutshell, while in unfamiliar territory, the USS Discovery crew is forced to get creative in their next efforts to survive opposing and unprecedented forces and return home. Amy, did you write these summaries?
I pulled them from the CBS Access.
Perfect. I'm like, oh, Amy, you did a good job.
Thank you.
So Patrick, let's just talk briefly about the episode Despite Yourself. So this is the first episode after the break when we find out that they're in the mirror universe.
Right. So now this episode I enjoyed. I liked it. I mean, it was kind of telegraphed they were going to be in the mirror universe, which was kind of, I don't know. This was like the beginning of the end for me, though, because looking back a couple of episodes later, it seems like every mystery everyone had figured out anyway. before it. And this was the episode where it really started happening. You know, because when we went to break, we didn't know, were they in the mirror universe? Were we in another timeline? Were we in some alternate universe? There were so many possibilities, and then it just turned out, yep, we're in the mirror universe.
But, okay, so I'm going to interrupt you there and ask you this question. Without that speculation, how would you have felt? Like, we do have to distance ourselves, partly because we are podcasters, partly because we are so involved in the Trek community, and honestly, partly because Jonathan Frakes gave that spoiler. I don't know if I would have predicted that they were going to the mirror universe had I not gotten that spoiler from Jonathan Frakes.
I didn't know he said that till we were talking about it 10 minutes ago.
Okay.
I didn't listen to any spoilers. But to be fair, I am on Babel, so a lot of people were still talking about it at times. But I tried to avoid that during the season because I was trying not to let that cloud it. But I thought the whole time he was in the mirror universe. And I felt that was just kind of, I don't know. When it happened, the moment it happened, it didn't really bother me. It was later on when all of them kept coming up that it became a problem for me.
So,
you know, that,
again, that just to me, that kind of boils down to the writing, right?
yeah, right. Like, you know, going to the mirror universe, I was okay with because it was the first one that happened. And okay, I kind of like the mirror universe anyway. But when you find out that Lorca is from the mirror universe, you're like, wow, man, come on. People guessed this in episode 2. You know, and then everything started falling in line like that. And it's like, now I don't like any of these twists because they're not really twists.
Right. Amy, be the shining beacon.
I think that because we're in so much into the fandom, that you're going to see that. Your regular person who's watching is not going to pick up. And I loved the reveal. I thought it was so awesome. And it's like, yeah, of course, you know, because I'm on the Babel conference and doing these podcasts, like, you know, so you're in the thick of it. And so listening to Notes on the Edge and stuff like that, like everyone's going to have their speculation, which I tend to not do. I don't like speculating. I just give me the show and let me enjoy it. And so when we found out that, yeah, Lorca's Mirror Universe, I loved it. I just think when you're so into the fandom that, oh, I saw that a mile away. Well, really, would you have had you not been such a Star Trek fan?
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't have seen that because I didn't see it coming, except for the fact that, you know, I don't think I would have seen the reveal of Ash Tyler being Vogue, honestly, if not for all the speculation. And I freely admit that. And I don't have a problem with that reveal, you know, for the most part. There are elements of it that I don't think work, but I mean, I do think that's a really interesting storyline. And I do think it's really interesting that they went to the mirror universe. I do think it's neat. I do like this episode a lot. There are parts of it that I don't like, but for the most part, I think the episode is really fun and interesting. And I think it's fun when they're changing the ship over, right? I think it's really neat that they're making this effort to change everything. You know, in hindsight, when you rewatch the episode, I don't think that when Lorca is about to answer the hail, I don't think that holds up because he is about to, had Burnham not stopped and said, wait a second, Lorca, we don't know who the captain of the ship is, and it gives us the reveal of Tilly. I don't think that holds up upon rewatches. I think it should have been Lorca that said, well, if we're in a mirror universe, we better find out who the captain of the ship is in this universe. I think that line should have been Lorca's because Lorca was about to answer that hail.
But I think it makes sense because he's the captain. So going, you know, and remaining in his character, quote unquote, like that's just his responsibility to answer. And so I think he was playing it like, well, I'm the captain, I'm going to answer type of thing.
Right.
I don't know. I read it differently.
Fine. So let's pretend Burnham didn't answer that. Yes, we've written the episode and the writers have something that they want to reveal. But had Burnham not stopped him, what would have happened? Hi, this is Captain Lorca of the USS
That's
Discovery.
the end.
That's the end.
Yeah.
That's it. And then him being from Mirror Universe would know not to answer that.
Yes, because he's from. It's not much for him to say, look, okay, if we're in a Mirror Universe and things are a little different here, right? We better pause for 1 second and just say, hey, what do we know of? Because they've taken the time to go out there and get this Klingon data device from the ship, or sorry, the data device from the Vulcan ship or whatever it is. They've taken the time to go and get it. I don't think it's too much for him to say, hey, that could have been the first thing that he did. Is like, we should look and see who's in charge of the ship in this universe. Because he would have known that he wasn't.
Right.
So it would have been,
it's a suicide. It's suicide for him to answer that hail. Right. I think that's the biggest problem. I think I had that problem too. And the fact that this is where the writing gets me. It's other shows have done it too, where they just flat out lie to you. So it tries to convince you that what you were thinking wasn't right. And then it turns out to be right. Because if he wasn't from Mirror Universe, right, then he might think to answer that hail. He might think this is just like our universe.
And I used that example as an argument when we were in the episode. I'm like, he can't be from the Mirror Universe. He almost answered that hail.
Correct.
Now, that is the only problem that I have with this episode. Other than that, I think the episode is fantastic and a lot of fun. So, I mean, I don't want to harp too much on it here because this isn't, I can let that one go. I can let that one go, and that one doesn't bother me too much. So, but I think we get some really interesting things. I mean, we see Stamets, we get these flashes and, he's in sickbay and he gets all violent with Dr. Culber. I think that's really interesting stuff because we don't know what is going on with Stamets at this time. Did we have anything else you want to say on Despite Yourself before we move along?
Well, there was a huge, everyone loves Captain Killy. And so we get introduced to her.
Yes, we get the reveal of Captain Killy. Did you like that? What did you think of that reveal? What did you think of Captain Killy and her? What the heck? What the hell?
No, I mean, I enjoyed that. I thought it was fun, but I think it started the downward trajectory for her character for me. Mm-hmm. Because I wanted her to be something more by the end of the season than she ended up being.
See, we've talked offline, you and I, that I've got troubles. I think near the end of the season, she becomes pure comedic relief. I don't think she's there yet at this point. I think there's a lot of going on with Killy, and I think she's still within character in this. For me, it's the last episode that I think she's suffers from being pure comedic relief. But
I agree. I just think that, I don't know, maybe it's just hard because I didn't just recently watch them. I watched them when they first aired and I haven't really gone back. Mm-hmm. Separating where in the timelines these things started to bother me. Mm-hmm. I know I remember liking her. I spoke about it on some show on here, but at some point, I think looking back at the season as a whole, this is where it really starts to tip over right after this happens. Mm-hmm. And she goes from a funny yet serious character to, well, now we're the Steve Urkel of the show.
I think that happens a little later.
Anyone under 35 doesn't even know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I don't know. I can't remember the line, but did I do that?
That's it.
Yeah, so. Anyways, we move along to episode 11, which is The Wolf Inside. And the crew continues their guise. Burnham undergoes a merciless mission in the hopes of helping the USS Discovery return home. Tilly works on restoring Stamets' neurofunctions. There was one part of this episode that I really think they missed the boat on, and I wonder if it's because they couldn't get him back. I think this episode would have been better if Vok was there. However, I think that T'Kuvma should have been the Firewolf. And I understand that the Firewolf does refer to the fact that he was the torchbearer, and that's the similarity in names and whatnot. But I think it would have made more impact on the show had T'Kuvma actually been in charge of the rebellion on this Mirror Universe side. What do you think about that, Amy?
I've never even thought about that. I like that idea. I would like to see T'Kuvma come back as well. And yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Patrick?
Yeah, I'm like Amy. I didn't even think that. Mm-hmm. I just saw Vok and I thought, oh, great, awesome. That makes sense to me. But it would actually make more sense the other way because they don't explain how T'Kuvma's Mirror Universe version is gone.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a missed opportunity, and it's really unfortunate. But, I mean, we do get that it plays into the reveal for Tyler coming to terms with who he is by confronting himself. And I think we still could have had that scene, even with T'Kuvma only, or if T'Kuvma and Vok were both there, that would have played into it. Because if all he was confronted with was T'Kuvma, he would have still been confronted with the mirror version of the person he was giving his life for and serving at the beginning of the series. right? So he could have still had that reveal with T'Kuvma, but confronting himself as a Klingon does give that reveal as well, and does give that conflict within himself.
Mm-hmm.
So, but in this episode, we get this mission that she's on, and that Burnham is on. She's got to destroy this race of the rebellion, this group of rebels that are fighting against the Terran Empire. And she's been given this mission from the Emperor. And a lot of people questioned the reveal of Georgiou being the Emperor in this universe. They said they were purposely left her vague in the previous episode as this unknown, faceless Emperor. And upon rewatching it, it does fit a little bit better because the information that they got this, the device that they got this information from was a rebel piece of technology. So it is possible that the rebels didn't know this. And the captain that gave her the mission that showed up in front of Burnham in the Wolfenside was the captain that was on the Emperor's ship. So he would have direct contact with the Emperor. So the Emperor could say, I'm pleased with it. So I don't have as much of a problem with one of the plot points that I used to have a problem with, which is, hey, how come nobody knows who this Emperor is until she appears on screen, and now it's everybody knows that who she was the whole time, right? And to me, it's because the information that they got was from this rebellious piece of technology, so that the rebels didn't know. My English is just terrible tonight. I'm sorry, guys. So the rebels didn't know who the Emperor was, and I'm fine with that. I got no issues with that. But we do get the reveal of Georgiou as being the Emperor, which I think a lot of us saw coming. Patrick, did you see it coming?
Yeah, it was obvious again. I mean, it was telegraphed. I think even if you weren't a diehard Star Trek fan, you would have seen this one coming, and you probably should. Maybe that they kind of tried to build to it a little too cleverly, but I think that if you didn't see this coming, you weren't paying attention to every episode that happened before this.
Right. Amy, did you see it coming, or were you surprised that Georgiou was the Emperor?
I only saw it coming because I'm here podcasting and on the Babel conference.
You were surprised by it, though, like with the reveal?
I thought the reveal was great. Was I surprised? Mm-hmm. No, because everyone said, oh, it's going to be Georgiou,
Yeah.
So
I thought the reveal was done well. The way they did it at the end, you're not seeing who's firing, and all of a sudden they appear in front of her, and you can see this shocked look on Burnham's face, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought it was done really well. Yes, people did see it coming. I kind of saw it coming as well, even before I read all the information, all the speculation online. But I think it's kind of cool that she ended up being, because we're having this symmetry throughout the season, right? We got this front and this back end of the story. And we've got these characters that are mirrored, for lack of a better word, throughout the season. So
no, absolutely. And I think if it was someone else, it would have ruined the story completely. Mm-hmm. I don't think you could have put someone else as the Emperor without messing up or diverting heavily in the storyline.
The only other person that there was a lot of speculation was Cornwell, that it was going to be Admiral Cornwell. And that could have worked, but it wouldn't have had the same impact.
Right.
Because again, this is Burnham's story that we're going through with this season. So we're led off to the next episode, Vaulting Ambition.
Okay, before you go, I just wanted to ask, I'm assuming that you're not thinking that Tilly is becoming comedic relief in this episode, because this episode, she's totally doing the science with Stamets and, really showing her compassion. Like, she's not the comedic relief in this. So she's still good in this episode with you guys?
Right. For me, the only time that her character starts to fall apart is the last episode.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
and
it's just
Patrick?
I think it happened slightly before the last episode, but it definitely falls off completely in the last. And her scenes then, we'll get into it, they're great. They're just not serious at all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I don't know if you, like you said, it's been a while since you've watched it. Is there something particular in this episode that didn't work for you for Tilly?
For me, no. I thought she was good in this episode. Mm-hmm. I think she's a good character overall. I just didn't like the direction they took her.
Yeah, we'll get
even
to it
in
when
her
we talk about the
comedy
last episode.
scenes. Okay, yeah, but even in her comedy scenes, I think are great. I would have liked more. Mm-hmm. And there's still time to change that in season 2. We'll see what happens.
More seriousness, you mean?
Yeah,
more seriousness. So, is this the first time, Amy, that you've heard somebody think that she's turned into comedic relief?
Yeah, because I didn't see that at all. I thought that she had a very good character arc, and especially in these 2 episodes where, you know, she's being Captain Killy and learning some, albeit mirror universe leadership styles. But, you know, I think that's continuing her arc and becoming a captain in the Prime universe, and all that she, you know, faces her fears and, you know, goes through in the mirror universe, I think makes her stronger.
Right. I would agree with you. At this point, she's got a great character development. She's expressing herself. She's confronting Saru because she wants to save Stamets, right? And, you know, with the, I think, Culber's dead at this point because he died in the first episode, I believe.
Yeah.
He died in the first episode.
Very end.
So, you know, even with the interaction that they have with each other, which I think even happened is, I'll talk about the scene. You know, the scene where I believe it's in The Wolf Inside when Burnham at the beginning is talking with Tilly, and she gets on and she says, "Okay, hang in there, friend." And then Saru comes on and they have that interaction. That scene is so amazingly shot. It is so beautiful. It is so well done. It is just amazing. And I want to get back to it because later on, it's part of the writing issues that I have. But Saru asks her, "Have you seen any other Kelpians?" And she lies.
Yeah.
And she says no. And he says, because there are so few in our universe, right? That she lies to him to protect him with the fact that he's a slave on this side. Mm-hmm. Right? Which is fine. I'm comfortable with, but I have a problem with his reaction later on in the season. And I can't remember exactly what he says, but we'll get to that when we get to it. I think it's in episode 14 or something like that, but we'll get to that in a little bit here. So, Vaulting Ambition is the episode where they go over and they spend time on Georgiou's ship, and we have a lot of crazy things happen. We have some Kelpian stew. And we get the reveal that Lorca is actually from the Mirror Universe. And this is where the writing of the season really starts to fall apart for me. And what really falls apart for me is the reveal of Lorca being from the Mirror Universe and how it's done. And this whole contrived thing of the eyes and the light, and how this is a trait of the Terrans in this universe. And that's the only thing that differentiates them from the Terrans of our universe. To me, I don't buy that. I don't like that. I think that's sloppy. And because as soon as you go to Mirror Mirror in TOS, it's bright. And I mean, that's fine. That's 10 years from now. I don't think they have miracle contact lens, you know, discovery technology that, well, let's invent these contacts so that we can now turn up the lights. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. You know, like, I'm not normally a stickler for continuity and for canon, but for me, this is really just doesn't make any sense. And there's a couple things in the show that were purposely left in the show for these crazy reveals. And this is one of them. Like, this didn't need to be there. You know?
Okay, so on my rewatch and then listening to that line that Georgiou says to Burnham that, yeah, this is the, you know, only distinguishable trait between us two. I thought, yeah, I didn't like that line. And you're right. I do agree with you that I don't like that line. They could have done it better. There's probably more differences than just this one little thing. So yeah, I do agree with you on the writing on that point with that.
I don't believe there would be any physiological differences between them and us. Like,
right.
You know, I don't know. Like, just, and the fact that the reveal is like, the way that Burnham finds out is because Georgiou just opens up the curtains and is like, oh, now I can't look at this. Oh, it's so bright. And it's like, well, why would you do that? Why would you open the curtains when you know you can't look at whatever it is you're trying to look at, except, oh, we've got to reveal that this is why we put this way back in episode 2 or episode 3. And it really doesn't work for me. Okay. And this is where the season starts to fall apart for me. And I don't know what it is and what happened that this is where it starts to occur. And I think from here on out, every episode has major flaws with writing.
Okay, can I also say one other thing?
Yes, please.
So this is the episode where we learn that the mycelium network is now damaged beyond repair and is dead, and it's going to now destroy everything. And I think if this is...
I think it's the next episode. It might be this one, but anyways,
I have
it's around
it in my
this
notes.
point. Okay.
And so here it is. You're going to destroy all universes combined. And it's this almost like a C plot. And I'm like, okay, if this mycelium network is going to die and it's going to kill both the mirror and the prime universe because it's going to spread everywhere, like that should be now the number one concern. And who cares about anything else if this is going to be the destruction of both universes and all life as we know it? I feel like it was set up very poorly, and they used words like everything, like it's going to destroy both universes. And then they didn't have really any much action to warrant those words being said. Does that make sense?
I agree with you 100% because all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the stakes are ridiculously high.
Yes, that's exactly it. Yeah.
To me, it's over the top, these stakes. And yes, it is basically brushed to the side to the point where I watched these episodes 4 times prior to recording each episode of The Edge that I've been on. It is so understated in this episode that by the time we got to it 2 episodes later or something like that, I'm like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah.
The stakes are really that high? Mm-hmm. And I don't know, like it's treated so nonchalantly in this episode.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just bizarre. So, I don't know. Patrick, what did you think? So, what did you think about the mirror reveal, and what do you think about the stakes for this?
So, it didn't really bother me so much that they had the photo, their eyes didn't like light. Yeah, right. So that didn't bother me so much. Thinking about it now, it bothers me more than it did then. But the way they revealed it bothered me. Like you said, they opened the curtains and that's when it dawns on her. Oh, wow, look, I get it now. Like that was cheesy. And the mycelium network going dead, destroying everything. There was no signs of it going dead, 2 episodes ago. All of a sudden it's all dead. There's no in between here.
Yeah.
That drove me crazy. Like it went from perfectly healthy and alive, running through whatever, the tunnels and all that.
Yeah, because he's in the forest, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Great. It was awesome. And then boom. Oh, there's nothing left, by the way. And there's nothing left, so let's just not care, because if it doesn't fix itself, the universe as we know it is extinct. All 800 million of them.
Yeah.
But like the way they say it too is it's dead. It's already dead. It's too late. And then we're just going to like pick it up 2 episodes later and fix it. Mm-hmm. And everything will be fine. So you knew once they didn't care that, again, here we go with that writing, they didn't care enough for that to actually come to fruition where it was like 0 hour when it finally got fixed. It was just never going to be important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's move on to the next one here. We are kind of limited on time here. And the next episode is what's past is prologue. And I had less problems with this episode. I still have problems with it. Like, this episode was really amazing. Like, the fight sequence was amazing, and the way that it was choreographed, pardon my nonsense English today. The way that they did the things with the arms and the legs and the moving stuff,
It's just mirror Brandon. Don't worry about
mirror Brandon, mirror fine. Canadian Brandon. It was really well done. I don't know why my brain is just mush today, and I apologize to all the listeners, but it's just blah. The things that were the things are all thingy. But we have this crazy thing at the end where the ship has to fly through the sun, the sun that's in the center of this ship, and then they surf the waves back home, and we get the reveal. This supposed to be amazing Culber reveal. Like, that's the other frustrating thing that I have, is that the writers, they knew what they were doing was going to cause problems when they killed Culber. And then the guy that plays Culber's immediately on Twitter, just wait, all my good stuff's really coming. All my emotional, happy stuff that you're going to love is coming. And to me, none of what he was tweeting was paid off in any of the remaining episodes. Like, this is not some amazingly emotional moment for me where Amy just about like slapped me through the monitor here.
Yes,
this is not a payoff.
emotional.
This is not a payoff for that at all.
Okay.
I was completely underwhelmed with the Culber payoff in this episode. And I'm okay with saying that in this episode. Amy, tell me why I'm wrong.
Well, because so we learn like how they meet and the opera, and that's playing in the background. And I love, that Stamets wants to stay there, and, and then they go back and it's them brushing their teeth and just sort of, like you said, this reflection, of the beginning part of the season, and so it just really solidifies their relationship, and how Culber's like leading him, okay, just open your eyes, and I thought it worked, and it was very touching, very moving for me. And I agree with Wilson Cruz that was the best scene.
Patrick?
Okay. So again, I didn't hear the spoiler, so I couldn't be bothered by this paying off or not paying off, but I did enjoy the scene. So I enjoyed it a lot. Maybe I enjoyed it because it was a great scene and it did pay it off. Maybe I enjoyed it because I didn't know it was supposed to happen, or I wasn't waiting for a payoff and kind of got one. You get what I mean?
Yeah, it's a payoff.
Well, then I'm just cold-hearted, and maybe I am for the Mirror Universe. I don't know. But to me, that wasn't worth it. And for the controversy that they stirred up by killing him was not paid off with this, with them saying, just trust us. We know what we're doing and we're going to get there and you're going to love it, because I didn't.
Yeah, I'm still upset that he's dead. Like, I was hoping for more because of that Twitter and because of all the hype, but I still thought that the scene was very touching, moving, and was just really good. But I want him to come back alive, and I don't know if that's going to happen.
Well, see, now the only problem I have with that is I don't want him to be dead, but I don't want him to come back alive. I don't want them to just kill off characters and it means nothing.
Right. I don't want to see
Culber
Culber ever
guy,
again.
kill him.
Myself, like,
right.
He's dead.
Unless he's like a flashback or something,
Sure.
someone thinking about something that happened. Cool. I'm okay with that.
Can he live in the network?
Mirror Universe and back.
No, I don't
he
think
can't.
so.
But okay.
Well, he was.
I know, that's where he is now.
But doesn't that just seem in the end to be really cheap writing to you? Like, if that's how they get over all this is by doing that.
And the logic of that
just
doesn't make any sense. Okay? Like, he was killed in sickbay. His neck was broken in sickbay. And so what? His spirit just floats into the network? Like, when I'm watching that episode,
it would make more
life
sense.
after death.
Yeah, but it would make more sense if it was Stamets who ends up in there because he had connections to it,
an
right?
echo of it or something. I don't know.
Right, but someone who wasn't actually using the network, manipulating the network, being stuck there, it seems like a cheap way to get him on the show.
Yeah, and now that you're saying it what it is Stamets was creating Culber from
just
his
like,
mind. So it can't be Culber.
And it was projecting the ship.
Yeah.
Just like it was projecting the ship.
Right.
The ship wasn't really there. He wasn't really in the ship, right? He was in, this was like some impulses that were happening in his brain,
Yeah.
And
this is a dream sequence.
Right. And if you told me if he dies in next season and then he ends up inside the network, I could actually justify that.
Yeah. But Culber.
Nobody else.
Yeah.
Right. But nobody else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mirror Stamets.
Okay, fair.
We should keep trucking along. The last thing I want to talk about for what's past this prologue is the wonderful cliffhanger that gets completely erased in the next episode when they see the reveal of the map and they say the Klingons have won the war, except that they didn't. Right? In the next episode.
Yeah.
Like that. Do you know what I think of when I see that? Like, I picture when I watch that, I want to look in the mirror and I picture seeing Kathy Bates in the mirror and shouting, "He didn't get out of the cock-a-doodle car." Okay, like I don't know if you've seen Misery, but this is exactly what Annie Wilkes is freaking out over when she forces Paul to rewrite the next Misery novel. She's like, "No, you got to restart this over because in the last Misery book, Misery Chastain is dead. You've got to start from there." And here they are. The Klingons have won the war, except they haven't in the next episode. You know?
Well, that's wasn't that the show Dallas?
But they rewrote a whole season. This is the next episode within the same season. You know, like this is, and not only that, but if you look at the timeline, they spend a hell of a lot of time on the bridge discussing the ramifications of what's happening, and Burnham and Mirror Georgiou are just standing in the transporter room the entire time. Like a significant amount of time passes before Saru gets to the transporter room. So I don't know. I'm like, oh, I'm sure there are listeners who are like, just shut up, Brandon. We don't want to hear you anymore. But I'm like, when I just think about this, it angers me because it's sloppy.
I didn't pick up on that for some reason. But yes, I can see your frustration.
The season builds up to this frustrating fart. Like it's just,
That is the nicest way you could have put that.
Yes.
So, but in reality, and then you talk about Saru taking forever to get there. I've said this before. I cannot stand Saru, and I know
he's my favorite
people
character.
love him. I hate him. He's useless. He bothers me. I just don't like him. He's never in the right place at the right time. He never picks up a threat when it really matters. Like, it's just so useless.
Well, Brandon, you know how TV works. Like, you show a scene, and then that's not really the amount of time. You know what I mean? Like, you're showing a scene, and then they cut back to
there's a lot of stuff that happens on the bridge in the teaser before Saru gets to the transporter room. A significant amount of time passes that Burnham and Mirror Georgiou are just standing on the transporter pad. A significant amount of time.
Okay, I won't fight you because I'm not quite remembering the exact sequence, so I will...
If I remember correctly, enough time for Stamets to get from engineering up to the bridge and have a conversation with Saru on the bridge, and then Saru goes to the transporter room. It's significant.
So they beam in, and then the
next episode.
To this.
And then a significant amount of action happens during the teaser before Saru gets to the transporter room.
Okay.
So
I see what you're saying.
Anywho,
okay.
Listeners, I'm sorry. I'm trying to love this show. Really, I am. I know you don't believe me, but the first 11 episodes are really good. And I mean, we're going to keep going. I mean, and I'm nitpicking is basically what I'm boiling down to. And I mean, I don't know. Like, I've seen so many people are trying to stay positive, and we're at the point in fandom right now where if you say anything against it, you're a hater. And I don't think I'm a hater if I've invested this much time. I've seen the entire season 5 times.
It's actually an interesting dynamic that's happened, because it used to be that if you liked like the newer series, you were just an apologist. Like, the newer series for most people didn't hold up because TOS was the only real Star Trek. Then Next Generation was the only real Star Trek, and so on. And then when Enterprise went out, people lost their minds. And but now you can't be critical of a show and still enjoy it. I still enjoyed it by the end of it. I'm still looking forward to season 2. There's just a lot of bad stuff that happens at the end of the season, and it's not the story they were telling that bothers me as much as it was the way they went about telling it. Right, the mechanics they used drove me insane. Like, even we were talking about the reveal of Lorca last episode, but at no point did the threat ganglia come out when he's on the bridge ever. No one figured this out beforehand. And we have a similar scenario now when you go back to the Prime Universe. This is the episode we go back to Prime Universe, right? So Georgiou becomes the captain.
At the end of this episode, at the end of The War Without, The War Within, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's next episode. I'll talk about that next.
Yeah, I didn't like the threat ganglia thing of like when
Useless.
it decided to come out, when it didn't. I
Useless.
agree with you.
We
on
will
that.
talk about it later on when we get to the Saru episode, and there are people saying, well, Saru himself questioned it, and it's like, yes, and that's the problem with it. Just because they acknowledge it in the episode doesn't make it not problematic. Because Tyler, so in episode 10, when we first get from the when we're first in the mirror universe, okay, Tyler is down at the end of season 9 in the jail with Laurel, and he's going crazy and he's got lots of problems. Then he comes to the bridge, and just before he comes on the bridge, his threat ganglia go off and he looks directly at Tyler. So he knows that Tyler set off his threat ganglia. He has it up until this point, and I can buy that because he's had no reason to question his identity until that last conversation with Laurel in the jail. Right? And that's immediately the next time he's within a proximity of Ash Tyler, his threat ganglia go off. And just because Saru is like, well, I would have known something, and points to his threat ganglia when they reveal that Lorca was from the mirror universe, doesn't make it a not problematic point. Just because they acknowledge it.
Right.
So that's my tirade. Oh, I'm sorry, guys.
So, just, okay, I know we're running out of time. So Patrick, but in this episode, you don't even like Saru, how he accepts the difference between Tyler and Voke. And, you know, Tyler's like, oh, I killed Culber. And Saru's like, no, that was Voke. And he differentiates between the two. You don't like that compassion and understanding for the Tyler Voke situation?
It was a cool conversation. It could have been had by anybody. I don't know. I don't like Saru.
I love Saru.
Okay.
Anyways, I don't.
All right,
I will
nice
talk
try.
about that
I don't
scene
know.
when we get to our Saru episode and why I feel that's problematic. But you know,
Okay.
I guess we should wrap this up with the last two episodes quickly here. And viewers, or
The last
listeners,
one.
just so you know why we're going through this so quickly, it's hard to talk. There's so much to talk about here, and we are just kind of scratching the surface. And I'm sorry for that, but there's just so much here to talk about that I don't know. Like maybe we could even do this again and touch on a whole bunch of different topics. But we did talk about The War Without, The War Within a little bit. But again, we've got this magic mushrooms that they had none, except he conveniently held some back and gave them enough so that they could completely make more. I mean, where in the previous episode, this was not a possibility again.
Right.
So,
right.
and then in the end, the final episode, we've got Georgiou leading the charge. And
No, but wait, I have a problem.
Yeah.
I have a problem. Before the last episode, nobody knows she's Mirror Georgiou. This whole crew just came back from the Mirror Universe. Georgiou is clearly dead in the Prime Universe, and they all buy the fact that she's just there. Now, everyone has fought me on this fact, and I don't think I'm crazy because
You're not crazy. Even I think that.
Like, yeah, I talked about this on live, right afterwards, and I was the only one who had this opinion. But like, Burnham clearly is trying to prove that she's not the real.
well, that's
Georgiou,
at the start
right?
of episode 15
So-
that happens.
Right. So nobody else realizes it.
Which is
Because
crazy.
if they did, she wouldn't
Right.
need to
And
do that.
this is where the part of the Tilly becomes comedic effect. When she walks in and Tilly, who has played the mirror version of herself, can't figure out.
Doesn't know.
Right? And then she does that little Hitler thing, like right there. And when she's like, you know,
Nope.
and even the way she's reacting when she thinks she's our Georgiou. Oh, I've heard so much about you. You're so on. Like, and then she does that little Hitler thing. Like, that's where where she's just simply turned into comedic relief in this last episode. When she eats the whale
So
blubber.
you don't find that action, her little, salute, isn't what happened when she was like, oh, what the heck? I mean, what the hell? Like, you don't see that as similar to how she was when she first found out she was
It's
killing?
similar, but it's a little over the top, right? It's
Okay.
more because what the hell, like that is her. She's trying to figure out who she is. That's the first time she's ever had to play that character, and with her given the chest bump salute thing. Like, it's just, it's a little over the top. It's a little too far. And the comedic effect when she's eating the whale blubber
doesn't make sense.
Like, Garmagander. And like, it's just that that didn't need to happen. They could have just walked away and said, Burnham, I need to talk to you. Instead, they go over and eat whale blubber, Wormagander, right? And again, comedic relief, getting high, comedic relief. You know, like, it's just, in this episode, she's used only as comedic relief, right? And
I can see that.
And I like
funny.
The scenes.
Okay, they are funny.
They're
hilarious. She is going to be one of the greatest comedic stars of this century. She is going to be amazing. And I love her. She's hilarious. But Tilly has become solely comedic relief in this episode. And Tilly is not just comedic relief. She is smart. Tilly is a smart person. She knows her job. She is going to be one of the greatest captains in Starfleet. I believe that. But I don't see that when she's simply comedic relief in this episode.
Yeah. How do you get there from here is the problem. You know, like we were talking before, like episodes 10, 11, 12, it's like a sine wave. You know, she's up at the top and now she's just starting to teeter over. So you still have some serious stuff going on. And then boom, she drops right out past zero in this episode. So we now have to build her character all over again, or she will become a great captain and it won't make any sense. Because they don't bother building. They just make her serious episode 1 again. Fully 100% serious for no reason.
I think she will always be funny. I just want them to tone it down a bit because I don't want her to be comedic relief. I love Tilly.
Right.
After Saru, she's my favorite character. Like, Saru and Tilly are my two favorites.
And the salute thing doesn't even make sense. You know you're back in Prime Universe. You already knew. You shouldn't have thought this was real Georgiou.
Because she's smart,
like that whole scene. Right. The whole scene just doesn't make sense to me. Burnham trying to out Georgiou doesn't. Everyone should have known. They should have just been told to shut up and deal with it, but they should have known. You know, and I heard all kinds of, well, they were just in Mirror Universe, so they're kind of used to that. Lorca kind of acted that way, so maybe that's how they all think a Starfleet captain acts. No.
Yeah.
No, Lorca wasn't even half as bad as she was because he was trying to fit in.
Right.
He wasn't what we expect of a Starfleet captain, but he wasn't like, don't call them the enemy planet, you know, just blow them up. Like, that wasn't even Lorca's Starfleet.
It was tough, frustrating finale, but I don't know. I don't know if the listeners are tired of hearing us right now, but Amy, let's wrap it up with something positive. What was your favorite part of the back half of the season? I'll go first.
Well,
I'll go
I don't
first.
have one. Okay.
My favorite part of the back half of the season is actually in the last episode. Okay. And I absolutely love when Ash Tyler is playing that Klingon game with those Klingons and the way he's interacting with them and the way he's talking Klingon and the way he's like having fun with them and pounding their chests and stuff like this. I love that scene and I love the tattoo parlor. That whole chunk of the episode is so well done. It's amazing. It is world building and I love it. And that's what I want to see more of. You know, I keep going back to The Walking Dead, and I don't like The Walking Dead right now. Season 8 has been kind of a mess for The Walking Dead. But Season 4 of The Walking Dead, I personally think was the height of the show. And they would have episodes dedicated to one or two characters, where the entire episode you would see just them, and you would spend time with just them. You may not see them for several episodes, but you would get an entire episode of just them. And I like that. They do that in Game of Thrones as well. And I realize it's my own expectations, but that is what I was expecting when we got this season. And I want more room to breathe. I want more time with character development. I don't want crazy twists and turns all the time. I want world building and I want time with the characters. And that's what I loved about Will You Take My Hand? And that's my favorite part of the season. Amy, we'll come back to you. Patrick, did you have a favorite part in the season, in the back half of the season?
In the back half of the season, my favorite part was probably, yours was a really good pick, but my favorite part was probably the gunfight between Mira Georgiou and Lorca and his, them. I think that was it was one of the best scenes for me, and I really didn't see it coming the way it happened until it happened. So I enjoyed that. I mean, it doesn't have nearly as much meaning as yours, It could stand alone, and I could just watch it in any other movie too, probably that has, any kind of guns. But I did really enjoy that particular scene.
Amy?
Okay, so it's not a scene. It's a theme, surprisingly enough. I just really liked Burnham's continual hope, even in the darkest of despair. And one of the things that I really liked was when she made that leap to tell Mir Giorgio, who she was and about the different universes. Like, I would not have done that in a million years. And I thought she was crazy, and I still think she's crazy. And I know a lot of people criticize the end speech, and all this, utopia and blah, blah, blah. But I think it really summarizes what we've seen, especially in this very dark time in the mirror universe and blah, 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 that Burnham still has the hope. And I like that about this back half of the season.
I've got my own problems with that last speech, aside from the fact where
I'm sure you do.
Where she says, most people feel that there are no second chances, and history has told me that this is true, except for the fact that the entire season is about Burnham getting a second chance.
Okay. I listened to it again. I think what she means by you don't get to go back and relive and change your mistakes. What happens is that you learn from your mistakes, and when other similar opportunities come up, that you're going to be better. You don't ever get a second chance. You get a first chance that may be similar to something that you've already experienced.
Patrick, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Where can people find you when you're not watching Star Trek Discovery?
They can find me on the I pop my head up in the Babel conference, not during the season because I don't want to see spoilers, but they can find me there sometimes. They can also find me on Twitter at MagicDrop5. It's one word. The 5 is a number. And as always, they can find me on Fridays, except for, this is airing much later. They can find me on Fridays on Warp 5.
Excellent. Well, critiquing, again, the second half of the season is not the only thing we've been doing here on the network. So take a quick listen to this clip and see what else you may have missed elsewhere on Trek FM.
Previously on Trek.fm. The Edge, a Star Trek Discovery podcast.
You're killing me. I'm going to pull my hair out if that happens, because I really do need to know.
What if, I just had a crazy idea. What if they get the captain in the first episode, but they continue on with these lower deck characters so well that we just never see the captain, and it's like the teacher in Charlie Brown, like...
The 602 Club.
And I don't know that I would want much more humor in this movie.
Right.
I feel like this is a survival story. Like, this is her surviving what's happening to her, not her controlling the situation like we see in future Tomb Raider movies where she kind of controls what's happening. And this is definitely Lara Croft is responding to what's happening to her. Like, the entire scene on the island is her trying to get away.
Warp 5.
So the A plot is the dog, and the B plot is his infatuation with T'Pol?
Well, there's actually kind of a C plot. Well, as part of the A plot is of why Porthos is ill.
Okay, why is Porthos ill again? I'm going to say this is definitely not essential.
Okay, I'm not saying that it's essential or not essential.
Continuing mission.
Yeah, there's a certain concession with that. If you look at the refit, obviously, is your example. For the director's cut remaster of motion picture, they added a few more CG shots. They're quite hard to tell because they painstakingly tried. Foundation imaging was really good at that. And they built a certain rig, and it's lit. The pylon's being lit from the ship itself. There's underlights. There's like the registry and stuff. But actually, you are correct in a sense. A couple of the lights, especially on the nacelles, don't actually come from a bulb. There's no practical way those lights can emanate from anywhere without magic.
And that's what else is happening on Trek.fm.
Check out all of these shows and join the conversation about your favorite corner of the Star Trek universe and beyond. You'll find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you're an Apple user, be Be sure to hit the subscribe button at the Apple Podcasts on iPhone, iPad, or Apple TV, or the desktop iTunes app to get the latest episodes as soon as they're published. And please leave us a star rating and written review. That helps other listeners to find our show. If you're not an Apple user, we've got you covered as well. You can find our shows basically everywhere: Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Windows Phone, in most third-party apps, and you can stream and download the MP3 file from our website or grab that RSS link.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show, and there are many ways for you to do that. The best places to join in a larger conversation is the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the search field, and it should come right up. And we're serving large quantities of Gormagander. If you'd like to send us an email, you can use the form on our website at trek.fm/contact. Choose to send to a show and select the Edge. That will come right to us. You can also find the network on Twitter at TrekFM and on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM. Amy, where can people find you when you're not lost in the Mushroomverse?
You can find me here on the network. I'm host of Earl Grey with Richard Marquez and Justin Ozer. You can also find me on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson, but my favorite place is on the Babel Conference on Facebook. Well, Brandon, where can people tell you that you are wrong about the scene with Culber?
You can tell me I'm wrong on Twitter at Brandon-Mutala. I pop up every once in a while on the Babel Conference, and you can post it on this episode's thread. You can find me if you want to hear. If you're not tired of hearing me, you can hear me on a couple of other podcasts. I host Warp 5 with Patrick, as well as our good friend Brandy Jacola. And I have a show called Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast with my friends Chris and Tom. And that's over on the Fandom Podcast Network. If you'd like to help us keep all our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. Just visit patreon.com/TrekFM. That's patreon.com/TrekFM to get all the details. Perks include early access to episodes, exclusive content, producer credits, and more. Available through our special patrons website, Patron Zone. It requires a great deal of money to produce, host, and distribute these shows each month, and we really appreciate any support you can give us, and we hope you'll join the team. Again, you'll find all the details at patreon.com/TrekFM. Amy, do you want to give a special shout out to our patron supporters, the associate producers?
Our wonderful associate producers, they are Norman Lau, Tony Robinson, Thomas Puleo, Lisa Slack, Shoaib Mirza, Richard Rutledge, James Muldrow, and Cornelia Reutner. Thank you so much for supporting Trek FM, and especially The Edge.
Well, that's all we've got for you this week, so join in next time and find out what we've been doing on the edge of Federation space.